Marcus Chains Washington had spent 30 years riding with the Crimson Brotherhood MC. He'd seen loyalty tested in ways most men couldn't imagine, watched brothers fall and others rise, and carried scars both visible and hidden beneath the leather vest that bore his club's colors. But nothing in those 3 decades had prepared him for what he discovered on a rain-soaked Tuesday morning behind the clubhouse. The sun was just beginning to crest over the pine-covered hills surrounding Redemption Falls, Georgia, when Chains stepped out of the clubhouse with his coffee. He was halfway across the gravel lot when he heard it, a soft humming, barely audible over the distant rumble of morning traffic. He rounded the corner past the row of Harleys, and his heart nearly stopped. There, sitting cross-legged on the concrete behind the garage, was a little black girl who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her hair was pulled into 2 neat puffs, but her yellow dress was torn at the hem and smudged with dirt. And surrounding her in a perfect circle were all 7 of the club's rescue dogs, pit bulls and mastiffs that the Brotherhood had saved from fighting rings and abuse, dogs that didn't trust anyone. "Sweet Jesus," Chains whispered. The biggest dog, Gunner, a scarred pit bull who'd taken 6 months just to let Chains touch him, had his massive head resting in the little girl's lap. The others sat perfectly still, watching her with an alertness that spoke of protection, not threat. The girl looked up at Chains, her dark eyes wide but unafraid. She didn't speak. She simply went back to humming while stroking Gunner's head. Chains pulled out his phone, calling the only number that made sense. "Pastor Mike, it's Chains. We got a situation." The Crimson Brotherhood wasn't what most people imagined when they thought of a motorcycle club. Sure, they looked the part, leather cuts bearing their patches, beards, tattoos, and bikes that could wake the dead. But Chains and his 6 brothers had built something different here. After years of running wild, they'd found their way to Pastor Mike's church, seeking redemption for pasts they couldn't outrun. The clubhouse became a place of second chances, and the dogs were their proof that broken things could heal. Chains had first seen Emma 3 months earlier, watching from the fence line of the property next door. The Johnsons had taken her in after the fire, the one that killed her parents and left her with nightmares no child should carry. Mrs. Johnson had mentioned at church that Emma hadn't spoken since that night, not a single word in 8 months. At first, Chains kept his distance, but the dogs noticed her first. Brutus would stand at the fence, tail wagging slowly. Diesel would whine when her shadow passed by. Chains began catching glimpses of her small face pressed against the chain link, her fingers curled through the holes, watching. Then, one Saturday morning, she was there, standing just inside the property line while Chains worked on Tank's food aggression. He didn't acknowledge her at first, just continued his work. But when Tank settled and lay down, Chains gave a small nod in her direction. Emma stepped forward, hand extended. Chains whistled low. "Tank, easy, brother." The dog approached slowly, and when Emma's small hand touched his scarred head, a single tear rolled down her cheek. From that day forward, she came regularly, never speaking, always watching. Chains showed her how to hold treats flat in her palm, how to stand with confidence, how to read a dog's body language. She absorbed it all like sunlight through glass. Then one night, Mrs. Johnson called, voice trembling. Emma said something in her sleep, just one word, "Gunner." Chains didn't know what it meant, but he slept better that night than he had in months. What he didn't know was that Emma had been visiting the dogs after dark. After the Johnsons went to bed, she'd slip through the gap in the fence and sit in the shadows, practicing the signals Chains had shown her, creating her own language with them. That Tuesday morning, as Chains stood frozen watching Emma with the dogs, Pastor Mike arrived with Mrs. Johnson close behind. The older woman gasped when she saw her granddaughter. "Emma, baby, you scared us half to death." But Chains held up a hand. "Wait, just wait." Emma slowly raised her right hand, fingers extended. All 7 dogs turned their heads toward her in perfect unison. She made a small circular motion, and they formed a tighter circle around her, facing outward, a protective formation. "Lord have mercy," Pastor Mike breathed. "How long has she been working with them?" "I don't know," Chains admitted. "But she's been teaching them things I never could." Emma stood slowly, and the dogs stood with her. She walked toward the group, and they followed in formation. When she reached Chains, she looked up at him with those old, knowing eyes. Then something impossible happened. "They understand," she said softly, "when you can't use words." The silence that followed was thunderous. Mrs. Johnson dropped to her knees, pulling Emma into her arms, sobbing, and Chains felt his throat close up completely. "Welcome back, little sister," he managed to say. Over the following weeks, word spread through Redemption Falls. The little black girl who'd found her voice through 7 rescue dogs and a motorcycle club. Some folks were skeptical, others were moved, but not everyone was supportive. The town council meeting happened on a Wednesday evening. The old firehouse was packed with residents, many wearing expressions of concern that barely masked something uglier. Karen Mitchell stood first. "I'm sure these men mean well, but is it appropriate for a young black child to be spending unsupervised time at a motorcycle club with dangerous dogs?" Chains sat in the back, hands clenched. "Those dogs are rescues," Pastor Mike said firmly. "And that motorcycle club is full of men who've turned their lives around." "But the optics," Karen continued. 7 large dogs, a child who's experienced trauma, and men with criminal histories. "The message," a new voice cut in, "is that healing comes in unexpected forms." Dr. Sarah Chen, Emma's therapist, stood near the front. "I've been working with Emma for 8 months. Nothing reached her. Until the dogs. Until Chains and his brothers gave her a safe space to process her grief without judgment." She pulled out her phone and projected a video onto the wall. Emma, standing in the training yard, 7 dogs responding to her silent commands with precision and grace. That child who everyone said might never speak again now leads conversations in our sessions. She's reading again, sleeping through the night, and you want to take that away because of appearances? The vote was close, but the council decided to table any action pending a formal assessment. If you believe in the power of observation, in trusting your instincts, and in the courage it takes to speak up when something feels wrong, then pause for a moment. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Black Iron Tales. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. The assessment came 2 weeks later, delivered by child welfare investigator Patricia Holmes. She watched Emma work with the dogs, interviewed the club members, and reviewed Dr. Chen's reports. "This is remarkable," she admitted to Chains. "In 20 years of child welfare work, I've never seen anything quite like this bond." "She saved them as much as they saved her," Chains said simply. Patricia nodded. "My report will reflect that removing her from this environment would constitute harm, not protection." But before the report could be filed, tragedy struck. Chains collapsed during a Saturday training session. One moment he was demonstrating a recall command. The next, he was on his knees, clutching his chest. Emma screamed, a sound that brought every club member running. Gunnar reacted first, pressing his weight against Chains's chest in rhythmic intervals, CPR pressure that Chains had once trained him for. Diesel ran for the clubhouse and returned with Chains's medication bag, something Emma had taught him during those midnight sessions. "Call 911!" Ghost shouted, but Emma was already giving commands. The dogs formed a perimeter, keeping the panicking bikers at a safe distance while Gunnar maintained pressure, and Emma held Chains's hand. "Stay with us, Chains. The dogs need you. I need you." The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. When Chains opened his eyes, Emma was sitting beside his bed, her purple notebook open on her lap. "You kept your promise," she whispered. Chains blinked, confused. Then memory flooded back. Kneeling beside a burning car on Route 47, smoke filling his lungs as he tried desperately to free a trapped couple, promising a dying woman named Sarah Johnson that he'd watch over her daughter, buying property near where the grandmother moved, needing to stay close to honor a vow made in fire and ash. "You were there," Emma said softly, "in your leather vest. I remember your voice telling Mama I'd be okay." Chains's eyes filled with tears. "You remember?" She nodded. "The dogs helped me remember." Mrs. Johnson appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "We found an old photo from a charity bike run 5 years ago, you and my son David standing together." "Firefighter appreciation ride," Chains said hoarsely. "David talked about his little girl the whole time." He reached for his wallet with shaking hands and pulled out a worn photo. Emma as a toddler, sitting on her father's shoulders at that same charity event, with Chains grinning beside them. "I failed them that night," Chains whispered. "Got there too late. The fire was too hot, but I promised Sarah, promised I'd make sure you were okay." "You didn't fail," Emma said firmly. Her small hand squeezed his. "You kept your promise. You gave me the dogs. You gave me a way to find my voice again." 6 months later, the Redemption Falls town square filled with people for an unexpected celebration. The Crimson Brotherhood had purchased the old veterinary clinic and transformed it. The Second Chances Center, animal therapy for kids who need it most. Chains, now recovered but moving slower, stood beside Emma as she cut the ribbon. The 7 dogs sat in formation behind them, still alert, still guardians. "This place," Emma said into the microphone, "is for kids like me. Kids who lost their words. Kids who hurt too much to say it out loud. Because sometimes dogs understand what people can't hear." The crowd erupted in applause. Even Karen Mitchell was clapping, humbled. Inside the center, children were already arriving. Emma moved among them with confidence, the purple notebook in her hands. "Today we're learning about trust," she told a group of 5 kids, "just like Chains taught me." If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Black Iron Tales. We bring you stories that prove heroism comes in all forms, that courage isn't measured by size or age, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Tell us in the comments, have you ever noticed something important that others missed? Your story might inspire someone else. 3 years passed. The Second Chances Center became a model program, attracting attention nationwide. Emma, now 10, trained new junior handlers and spoke at conferences about animal-assisted therapy. The Crimson Brotherhood became an unlikely pillar of the community, volunteering at schools and mentoring at-risk youth. Their reputation transformed from dangerous outsiders to local heroes. On a warm spring evening, Chains sat on the clubhouse porch with his brothers, watching Emma work with a new group of children. Gunnar, now 12 and moving slowly, still followed her everywhere. "You think she'll remember us when she's famous?" Reaper joked. "She'll remember," Chains said with certainty. As if she'd heard him, Emma looked over and waved. The children with her waved too, their faces bright with joy. "You know," Ghost said thoughtfully, "when I first patched into this club, I thought it was about the bikes, the brotherhood, the freedom." "And now?" Chains asked. "Now I know it was about getting to this moment, about being the kind of men who could be trusted with something precious." Prophet raised his beer bottle. "To second chances. To kept promises," Steele added. To Emma, Bones finished. They clinked bottles as the sun set over Redemption Falls. 5 years after that first morning, Chains sat in a hospital room once more. This time the illness had progressed too far. The brothers came to say goodbye. Pastor Mike prayed. Mrs. Johnson thanked him through tears. But it was Emma, now 12, who sat with him at the end. "I'm not ready to let you go," she admitted. "I know," Chains whispered, "but I kept my promise, didn't I?" "You did more than that. You showed me what real family looks like." He smiled weakly. "Your turn now. Keep the center going. Keep helping those kids." He reached for an envelope on the bedside table. "Don't open this until I'm gone." Emma's hands shook as she took it. "Promise." That night, Chains passed peacefully. The next morning, Emma found all 7 dogs gathered outside his room in a perfect circle, heads bowed. Gunnar pressed his graying muzzle into her hand. She opened the envelope. "Emma, the promise I made to your mother wasn't just about keeping you safe. It was about helping you find your strength again, your voice again, your purpose again. Keep running the center. Keep healing broken things. And when people question whether a black girl from tragedy can change the world, you show them that she already has. You're not just part of the brotherhood now. You're its future. With love, Chains." 10 years later, Emma Washington Johnson stood before a congressional committee. At 22, with a master's degree in psychology, she testified about alternative therapy programs for at-risk youth. Behind her sat the Crimson Brotherhood MC. And at her feet, ancient and gray but still alert, lay Gunnar. now 17. Healing doesn't look the same for everyone, Emma told the lawmakers. My journey back from loss started with 7 dogs and 7 bikers who refused to see me as broken, who kept a promise even when it was hard. She pulled out that worn photograph, Chains standing beside her at the original center's opening, Gunner between them. This man saved my life by seeing it was worth saving. And if there's one thing I've learned from the Crimson Brotherhood, it's this. Sometimes the people society writes off are exactly the ones who understand redemption best. The bill passed. Federal funding secured. The Second Chances model would expand nationwide. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you to trust your instincts, to speak up when something feels wrong, and to never underestimate the power of paying attention, please share it. Subscribe to Black Iron Tales for more stories that prove heroes are everywhere. Courage comes in all forms, and sometimes the smallest person in the room has the biggest impact. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Emma's place? That evening, Emma returned to Redemption Falls for the center's 10th anniversary. A new sign hung above the entrance. The Second Chances Center. Founded by Emma Johnson and Marcus Chains, Washington. In memory of all the broken things that learned to heal. As the sun set, Emma stood in that same training yard. Around her sat 23 therapy animals, all of them rescues, all of them healers. Gunner, impossibly still alive at 17, lay beside her. She knelt and wrapped her arms around his neck. "We did it, old friend," she whispered. "We kept all the promises." The dog's tail thumped once against the ground. Behind them, the Brotherhood stood watch. Guardians not of territory, but of something far more precious, hope, healing, and the unbreakable bonds forged between broken souls who refused to stay broken. What began in tragedy transformed into triumph. What started in silence became a symphony heard nationwide, and what one biker promised in fire and ash became a legacy that would outlive them all. The Crimson Brotherhood MC still rides those Georgia roads. Children still come to the center. And in every breakthrough, every moment when a silent child finds their voice again, Chains's promise echoes forward through time. Some legacies are measured in monuments. This one is measured in paw prints, kept promises, and the lives transformed by 7 dogs, 1 little black girl, and a biker who believed that redemption was always worth fighting for. This is Black Iron Tales, where every story proves that courage comes in all forms, heroes are everywhere, and love, real love, leaves marks that never fade.